Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to dynamically create a simple UX friendly blog post template with Divi. This is the final result we're aiming to achieve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. So the very first thing we need to do is to head over here to Divi, click on Theme Builder. So this is where we need to design our template for all our posts. So over here, I'm going to click on this plus button to add a new template, and then I need to target this template to all the posts. So I'm going to select all posts, create template, and now I can go in and start designing my template. So I'm going to click here on add body, click on build custom body, build from scratch, and I'm going to start off with 3 columns. Next, I'm going to go into my row settings because over here I need to set my gutter width, and I'm going to click here on design, sizing. So my gutter width here is the space between the 2 columns. So we want to make sure there's no spaces between the columns. So I'm going to drag this all the way down to 1. Next, I'm going to add some borders to my columns. So I'm going to come over here to my first column, click on this gear icon, design, border. So the border we need to add is going to be on the right. So I'm going to click here on this tab, and then the size here needs to be 1 pixel. And I also need to add my color here. So I'm going to go with a very dark gray. So this one here would work fine. We need to repeat this one more time. So I'm going to save this, copy item styles, and paste it to the second column. So now we can see we have our 2 columns. So pretty much we're done here. I'm going to go ahead and save. Next, I'm going to add some text modules in these columns. So I'm going to click on this plus button here and search for my text module and select it. So what we need to do here is to add some dynamic text. So I'm going to click here on this little item. So here we need categories. So post categories. I'm going to select that. I'm going to save this one more time. Then over here, we also need to add another text module. So I'm going to go ahead and search for it, select it. We're also going to use dynamic. So I'm going to click here on this little icon. And this time we need the publish date. So I'm going to search for my post publish date, select that, save this as well. Now on this third column, we need to add another text module. And in that text module, this time it's going to be post comments. So I'm going to come over here and choose post comments. Now, as you can see here, this just gives us the number. So on the after, we just need to add the word comments. And now that makes sense. So you might also need to add a space here. Okay, so now that looks much better. So pretty much we've added all the content that we need here. I'm going to save this one more time. Right, so the next stage is to go in and customize my text in all these text modules. So the quickest way to do this is to hold down the command key, and I'm going to select all 3 of them so that when I start making all my changes, they will be applied to all 3 of them. So I'm going to click here on this gear icon. Oh, by the way, if you're on a PC, you need to click on Control. So on a Mac, it's Command. On a PC, it's Control. All right, so I'm going to click here on my gear icon. So now I'm going to go into my design text. So over here, I'm going to choose my font, and my font here is going to be Lato. I'm going to select it. For my text size here, I'm going to use 1.1 rem. For the letter spacing, it's going to be 1 pixel. And for the line height, I'm going to set this to 2 em. And finally, we want to center this. So I'm going to click here and center everything. So pretty much that's all we need to do here. I'm going to save. All right, so moving on, the next stage is to add another row. So I'm going to click here on this plus button. It's going to be a single column. And in this column, we're going to add a text module. I'm going to select it. And then over here on our dynamic content, I'm going to click on this little icon. And this time we need the post title. So I'm going to select this. And then we want to go in here and make all our changes. So I'm going to click here on edit dynamic content. So because we want this to be a heading, this needs to have the HTML tags. So I'm going to start by adding my first tag on the before, and I'm going to add my second tag on the after. So now it makes it heading 1. So I'm going to save that. Next, I'm going to come over here to the design tab, click on heading text. And then here we're going to change this to a font called Playfair Display. So I'm going to select it. Alignment, this needs to be centered. And then now let's add our sizes. So here for our heading text size, I'm going to set this to 6.2. As you can see, this is nice and big. Now I want this to look beautiful on all screen sizes. So I'm going to come over here to this little icon, click on tablet, and then over here, we're going to set it to 3.2. On the phone, we're going to bring this down again to about 2.3. And pretty much this is how it needs to look like. Next, I'm going to come over here to spacing, because here I need to add a top margin of 50 pixels and a bottom margin of 100 pixels. So pretty much I'm happy with how this looks like. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to add another text module. So I'm going to search for it, select it. Now this time my dynamic content here is going to be post except. So I'm going to come over here and select my post excepts. I'm going to save this, and then over here on the design tab, I need to add all my text. So I'm going to choose here my font and I'm going to go with Lato. The size here is going to be 1.1 rem. On the letter spacing, I'm going to set this to 1. Line height is going to be 2 em, and the text alignment is going to be centered. So I'm going to save for now, and then next I'm going to add another row. So I'm going to click on this plus button, and the row structure we're going to go with is 2 columns. Now, before we can actually do anything over here, what we need to do is to add some CSS code. So the CSS code I'm going to add is going to make sure that when our screen shrinks to, let's say, a tablet or a mobile phone, these columns will always be next to each other. So I'm going to click here on this little gear icon for our row settings, click on advanced, and then I'm going to come over here to custom CSS, and in the main element, I'm just going to paste this CSS code. So this CSS code can be found in the post, which I will link to in the show notes below. So now I'm going to save. We're going to go to column 1, and this time we're going to add an image module. Choose it. Now here to add our dynamic image, what we need to do is to delete this and then click here on this little icon for our dynamic content, and we are going to choose our author profile picture. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. Now let's head over here to design. On image alignment, we're going to align this to the right. And then over here on the sizing, we are going to set our width to 50 pixels. Now, if you wanted to change this from a square to a perfect circle, let me show you what you can quickly do here. So all you have to do is to come over here to border, and then on all the sides, make sure you add 100 pixels. So now you can see this has been updated now, and it looks like a perfect circle. So that's all we need to do here. I'm going to save, come over here to second module. So here I'm going to choose, or I'm going to search for a text module and select it. And again, we're going to come over here to the dynamic content, and this time we need the post author. Select it. Now let's add our font. So I'm going to save this, come over here to the design tab, click on text, and I'm going to choose my font here. It's going to be Lato, and my text size is going to be 1.1, and my letter spacing here is going to be 1 pixel. And all the way down here to spacing, I'm going to add a top margin of 15 pixels. Save this. Now it's time to add another row. So I'm going to click on this plus button. We're going to go with a single column. So I'm going to search for my text module here and select it. But this time we're going to leave this empty. And then we're going to come over here to background, click on the third tab, and we want to add a dynamic image here. So I'm going to click on this little plus button. I'm going to choose featured image. And now I'm going to go to the design tab, click on sizing. So over here, I'm going to start by adding my width, and it's going to be 800 pixels. The module alignment here is going to be centered. And then over here on spacing, I'm going to add some padding both to the top and the bottom. So I'm going to activate my chain here, so the same value gets added both to the top and the bottom. So ideally, I would like this to be a circle. So I'm going to come over here to border and just add a value of, say 500 pixels to all the sides. So now you can see we have a perfect circle, and then save. So this area here is going to be replaced by our featured image. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to add another section. So I'm going to click on this plus button, and this is going to be a regular section. So we're going to go with a single column, and now we are going to add the post content module. So I'm going to select it, and all I have to do here is to go into the settings, design, and I'm going to start here with my text, and I'm going to change this to Lato. Now the reason why I'm just choosing the same font here is because we want to have consistency. Next, we're going to come over here to our text size. We're going to set this to 1.1, and for our letter spacing, I'm going to set this to 1. And for my line height, I'm going to set this to 2.3. Now let's customize our headings. So I'm going to start here with my heading. So I'm going to choose my heading fonts to be Play for a Display. So you want to go ahead and set your headings all the way to heading 6. So all you have to do is to click on the tab here, choose the font, and the size here is going to be 3.5. Heading 3 is going to be 2.3. Choose my font here, set this to 2.3. So pretty much you need to do the same to all these other headings. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to save here. And then I'm going to come all the way down here, and I'm also going to add another row. So I'm going to click on this plus button, and this time we're just going to go with a single column. Now, before we add any modules in here, I'm going to go straight to my row settings. And here I'm going to add a top margin. So I'm going to click here on design spacing. So my top margin here is going to be 100 pixels. I'm going to save this. And in here, we're going to add our comments. So I'm going to click on this plus button, and I'm going to choose my comments module. Now let's customize this. So I'm going to click here on design fields. So for our fields background color, I am going to set this to white. And then for our font here, set this to Lato, and the size is going to be 1.1. Now let's head over to the borders. So here on the fields borders, I'm just going to make sure that this is set to 0. And for our fields border color, in fact, before we can add the color here, we need to add our width, and it's going to be 1. And for our border color, this is going to be black. Now let's change the image settings to, I'm going to come over here to image, to all corners. I'm going to set this to 100 pixels. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because we want to have this perfect circle. Now let's customize our text titles. So over here on text, we're going to go to heading 2, choose Play for a Display, set our size to 3 rem, and the line height here is going to be 1.4. Now let's keep some consistency here by coming over to the meta text. And again, we're going to set this to Play for a Display, 1.4 rem. And then the comment settings, we're going to set our text here to Lato, size to 1.1 rem, set our letter spacing to 1, line height to 2 em. Okay, so that's looking much better now. It's much easier on the eye. It's quite straightforward to read. Now over here, we can see this, where is our button? Our button here doesn't look great. So what we're going to do is we're also going to make some changes to our button here. So to make changes to our button, what we need to do is to head over here to button, activate use custom styles for button. And the very first thing we're going to do here is to add our button text color, set this to white. Then our button background color, this is going to be black. So for our button border width, we're going to set this to 0. Border radius, set this to 0. Button letter spacing, we're going to set this to 1. And for our font, we're going to set this to Lato. Now let's add a top and bottom padding. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here. So for our top padding, in fact, top and bottom is going to be 20. So over here on the padding, I'm going to set this to 20, both to the top and the bottom. So I'm going to activate my chain. So pretty much we're done here. This is how our content is going to look. But for us to actually see this in context, we actually need to save this and then open a new post. Over here on the text as well, I forgot to mention this. We can change this color. In fact, let's make this black. So I'm going to come over to heading text, set this to black, and then save. All right, so now that we've added or designed our templates, now we can just close out of here, save changes. Now I'm going to come over here to my site, and I'm just going to go through all my posts. Now notice I'm going to choose any one of these, and then we're going to see what it looks like. So now that we've designed this template, the layout for all our posts is going to look the same. So if you take a look here, you can see it is a nice heading here. We have the category, the date, we have the comments. And if I scroll down here, this is our featured image. And all the way down here, you can see this is the comments. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.